You are listening to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast presented by Realm of the Mist Entertainment with your host, John Tolley.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast, coming to you, as always, from deep within the Outer Rim, far beyond the watchful eyes of the Galactic Empire. My name is John Mark Tolley, and joining me today, as always, is Mr. Joe Cahill and
Mark,
Mr.
everybody.
Ray Rumsey. Hello, and Mr. Ray Rumsey.
Hello.
Gentlemen, how are you guys today?
Doing fantastic.
Yep, hanging in.
Good. Awesome. We want to apologize, first of all, for those of you who might have been expecting the show last week. Stuff came up, life, birthdays, stuff like that. So unfortunately, we were not able to record a show, but this year you get a double whammy. That's right. 2 shows for the price of 1. There are going to be a special interview coming up pretty soon, and also the main show. So you get a special episode, plus you get to hear our lovely voices again. So you can't beat that, can you?
Not with a lightsaber.
You can't beat anything with a lightsaber.
You can slice it, but yeah.
Oh, as seen on TV.
That's right. So there's been some pretty big news coming out of the Star Wars universe recently, since the last time we talked. I thought we would hit on a little bit of that before we go into our main topic for the day. And the first one I want to talk about is the news that Kevin Feige is apparently going to be making a Star Wars movie. How do you guys feel about the basically the man who created the MCU being tasked to helm a Star Wars trilogy, or a Star Wars movie at least?
Hopeful?
Yeah.
I think that it will probably be visually stunning.
I do too. One thing I'm thinking could be really good is if they bring Feige in to basically kind of do what he did with the MCU. He's good at, because he's the one who kind of brought all these movies together and kind of created the whole universe. And I think that's something he can do, is take these different stuff, take all these different movies and the books and the cartoons and kind of bring them more into a more cohesive universe and kind of bring everything together and kind of streamline it more. So I think that's something that he could be really, really good at doing. And I'm really, really excited and really can't wait to see what he brings. And one of the rumors is coming on is that and her name just
Brie Larson.
Brie Larson is, and I know for a while I've been hearing that she has been interested in being on Star Wars. So what do you guys think about Brie Larson possibly playing a role in Star Wars? I mean, are you fans of Brie Larson, or do you think that, like a lot of people, she could, be, because let's be honest, Captain Marvel had a lot of detractors.
Captain Marvel had a lot of detractors before it was ever seen.
Yeah, this is true. Do you think this could be a good move, or do you think this could alienate a lot of fans who could see it as they're just wanting to push a certain type of politic?
I think they're
hand that to Ray.
anyway.
Yeah, this is true. They've kind of already, they've kind of been doing that already. So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, this is Disney.
yeah.
That's all anything is anymore, is just pushing politics, you know. Just depends on how well they hide it.
This is true.
So,
I think, I mean, it's one of those things that when you do have an actor or actress that is a true fan of that genre or that series or whatever it is, I think it can show through in the final act, in the final film. You see that they really do care about it, and they want to do the best they can. I always wonder a lot of times whenever you see interviews with actors, and especially ones that are in genre films, or saga, like a Star Wars or Star Trek, and they talk about how, they've been fans for so long. Sometimes you kind of wonder, have they really been fans for that long?
Yeah. Have you ever watched it? Because
yeah. Or have you just become a fan since you got picked? They hired you to play the role. And sometimes you can tell those that are just faking it and those that are genuine fans.
Right.
Well,
that's what I like about Ewan McGregor.
What's that?
No.
Greg, how he did his whole thing of coming out to do Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
He didn't come out to play Obi-Wan. He learned how to play Sir Alec Guinness playing Obi-Wan.
Yeah. And he did a really good job.
Yeah. I mean, if you go back and listen to him talk about it in the early days, he watched every Sir Alec Guinness movie he could get a hold of.
Mm-hmm. Because he wanted to get that cadence and that hello there.
Yeah, get that all down. And he did a great job. And that's a fan to me who also, wanted to make sure he stayed true to it.
Yeah. So the other big, I guess you could say, news, and I know you guys covered it this week on Realm of the Mist and on our upcoming show, but just kind of get your thoughts on the George Lucas news. Apparently, George Lucas felt betrayed by the fact that they didn't use his script or his story ideas. At least that's kind of the general, in a nutshell, what happened. There's a lot more. You can read the articles and read the interviews and stuff like that. But what were you guys' thoughts? Just in a nutshell, just really quick.
I think it was all a thing to sell more books.
You think so?
Yeah. It's, George hasn't come out and said anything, really.
Yeah. So this is all just hearsay? This is all just...
Well, he may have said these things, but I think it's being made into a big deal because it's publicity for the book.
Yeah. And I mean, you can't blame, when you have these ideas and you send them to the person that's, and then they decide to go in a completely different, you're going to be a little disappointed.
Right.
But from what George even said that it meant the best. That, just the fact that they went in a different direction than what he wanted does not necessarily mean that's a bad thing. And I think even George would admit that that's not necessarily a bad thing. They just had a different vision than what he had. And, once he sold the rights to Star Wars, he really couldn't say anything. Yeah, he could be disappointed, but there's nothing really he could do.
Right.
It wasn't like he had, the rights anymore or had any say. It'd be one thing if he was hired in, even if he was hired in as a consultant, ultimately it's, Kathleen Kennedy's or whoever the director of that movie happened to be, whether it be J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson. Inevitably, it's their decision as to where the story goes. So
exactly, and you'll see how the studio feels about how the direction of the director went by whether he has a job afterwards.
exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you do feel, in a way, you can feel kind of bad because this was George's baby. And, this is like, she's given this baby up for adoption basically to Disney, and Disney's taken it on and, went a completely different way than, probably what George was wanting. But I think it would be interesting to me to know what George's vision was. I think that could be an interesting story. Even interesting, like if you want to do a what if book or what if comic, to have George pen that story and put that out like, hey, this was my idea. And then the fans can decide, do we like George's version or do we like the version that we got? Because I think that could be, and I have no problem with them writing books in the Legends canon. Have the regular books that are coming out, the comics that are in the Disney canon still come out, but then still write books that are outside of that. And I think this could be a good one for that, like the George Lucas sequel trilogy. Because I think I would really like to know what he saw and what his vision was for Star Wars after Return of the Jedi, and what he changed and what from what we saw and what was kept and stuff like that. So, I mean, what do you guys think? Would you like to see that in a book form? To see that story?
I definitely would love to know.
Yeah. I think every Star Wars fan would. I mean,
yeah, it would be nice to see where his thought process was.
Yeah.
Like where he wanted to go from where he was. Because I'm sure it was a completely different direction than the way things have gone, or else he wouldn't have felt, the way he does, supposedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Or at least did.
Right.
Apparently, from what I was able to read, this is something that happened. Like once he heard, he felt disappointed and upset. But they say time heals all wounds, and I'm sure that the money that he got from the sale softened the blow quite a bit.
Yeah, 4.5 billion reasons why it's softened.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a lot of other movies to make right there.
Yeah. This is kind of off subject. Do you think we'll ever see George Lucas return to filmmaking?
Wow.
Or, because, I mean, and if so, will it be as a director or will it, because he's only, like, he basically only, last movie he directed before he did the prequels was Star Wars back in the 80s. And then he went to more of a production, being a producer. So do you think we'll see more? And if so, I mean, how would he, what would he produce it under? Because Lucasfilm is itself is owned by Disney. So he doesn't have the rights to Lucasfilm. So he'd have to do it either by himself or, I'm not sure how that all would work though.
Yeah, it couldn't be a Star Wars story. He'd have to go off and do something new.
Yeah. Unless of course he got, went to Disney and said, hey, I'd like to do a Star Wars movie. Could I do it with you guys? And then Disney said, and I think if he did that, Disney would be stupid not to say, yes, come on, please. You're the man who created this. Yes, do.
Well, with Disney, you can never tell, because we almost lost Spider-Man in the MCU.
Yes. Whew. Don't remind me of that. That was a dark time.
It's a dark time in the galaxy.
Let's see. Before the dark days, before we almost lost Spider-Man.
Before the Empire, Disney.
Oh, I rule you all. No. All right. Well, I think this is as good a time as any to segue into our main topic. The Jedi Knights, according to Ben Kenobi, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy for over 1,000 generations. They have been the mainstay of the Star Wars universe since the beginning and have really played an integral part. But who are the Jedi? What do they stand for? How do they start? What is their history? Today we'll dive as deep as we can into the lore, history, and legend of the Jedi Knights. Dun, dun, dun. Sorry. So I thought it was interesting, since last time we did it, we talked about the Sith, to talk about their counterparts, the Jedi. Now, in the new canon, there hasn't really been a lot so far. I think we're going to get more now maybe in this new film and afterwards with the old Republic Jedi and how the Jedi got started, especially with the Benioff and Weiss film, which is looking like it's going to be Old Republic. We might get some more backstory on the Jedi. So a lot of what the fans have to go off now is still legend, with the start of the Jedi, or the Jedi, as they're originally called. But I think I'll just start off right now and start off first by just kind of getting your guys' thoughts on the whole concept of the Jedi and what you think of when you think Jedi. And Joe, we'll start with you.
To me, where the Jedi were, say, episode 1 through 3, Judge Dredd, I am the law. Kind of the attitude of, we know better than you, just do as we say. As far as the lore, where they start, I'm hoping we see a lot more of that come out that's going to be canon for us. Versus the Jedi, because we don't even know if that's going to be canon yet, with the books that are hidden on board the Falcon.
That would be, and even if we get like bits and pieces, just stuff that we can kind of piece together. And of course, like I said, we're looking like we're going to get an Old Republic movie. We can kind of get more into that older, ancient Jedi Order, what the Jedi were like, because if this takes place, let's say 1,000 years, but if the Old Republic movie takes place 1,000 years before the events of the prequels, then we can get kind of a good sense of where the Jedi were, and maybe even get a sense of, of books in between there to kind of fill the gaps between where the Jedi were at that point and how they got to where they were when we see them in episode 1 through 3.
Right.
With them at their peak and then their fall.
Yeah, and I don't even think of 1, 2, and 3 as their peak.
Right.
I think of that as the time of hubris.
I think they were at their. I think when I say at their peak, I think that they were at their militarily and strength-wise, physical strength-wise, and the amount of Jedi that they have. That's what I mean when I say they were at their peak. Okay. That's when they were at their their height of power. And like a lot of people, empires, you reach that height of power, and then it's just crashing down after that. And it's just a matter of how fast you crash down. And I think the Jedi crashed very, very quickly at that point. So,
Go get her, Rey. Come on.
When I think of if we're talking about the first ever, I don't even think they were probably trained with lightsabers at all. I think they were more like monks that could commune with the Force.
Well, if you watch, and again, this is Legends, but if you see any of the comics from the early days of the Jedi, the lightsabers were invented fairly early on, but they almost look like the proton packs from Ghostbusters.
Oh, that sounds good.
They had these. Yes, don't cross the streams. What are you thinking of? What did you think of, Ray? What did you think of?
What did you do?
What did you do, Ray? What did you do? But yeah, they had these backpacks, and then they had like a cord that went out to where the lightsaber was held. So that was a really interesting, and how they were able to kind of coalesce and eventually become the Jedi Order that we knew and come to know and love, and but yeah, so let's go on with the Jedi Code, and we kind of touched on it a couple weeks ago, but let's kind of re-go over it. So the Jedi Code is: there is no emotion, there is peace. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no passion, there is serenity. There is no chaos, there is harmony. There is no death, there is the Force. At this point, I feel Mr. Spock should come up and just say, "And live long and prosper." Because that is very, very Vulcanish. That seems like something that could fit very well in with any Vulcan code. But yeah, I mean, it seems to me like something happened between the foundation of the Jedi to when they fell to make them become very dogmatic. And I don't know if that's initially what the Jedi, like a lot of religious organizations, they start out one way, and then due to things happening and society changing, or they themselves changing, or certain people coming into power, it changes a lot from what the original intent was. And I think you see this with the Jedi.
Oh yeah, the temple is this huge ornate thing that almost is on par with the Senate.
Yeah.
As far as visibility, they stare at each other across the way.
Yeah. And I think there was. Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Sorry, you were talking first.
No, I was thinking it's when you look at it, they went from being protectors to almost a ruling class.
Mm-hmm.
Who does the chancellor always call on? The Jedi. Go take care of this for me. Go do that for me.
Yep. Yeah. I see a lot of similarities between some of the fighting. If you're a history buff, then you'll see a lot of similarities between the fight between the Holy Roman Empire and the papacy, as to who held the power and who chose who, and even with the fall, very similar to the fall of the Knights Templar, mm-hmm. in history. So there's a lot of similarities between that history and I wish we could have had Dr. Liddell, who is a historian. She could have really shined a lot more light on that aspect of history and the similarities between that, and maybe we'll get her on again sometime. I know she's right now she's in school right now teaching. So, but again, that invitation goes out to Dr. Liddell. If you, we'd love to have you back on. It's always fun talking with you. But Anyway, I digress. But yeah, it's really, see how quickly their hubris came about, or at least from what we see in the movies, how quickly it came and how quickly the fall came.
Right. How long was it actually, that they had gotten to that point? Or, was it the last 20 years and that's when it just was a really fast fall? Or was it a 500-year build up to this fall?
It seems to me like it was more, maybe somewhere in the middle, maybe.
They turned a corner and kind of got a blind eye going.
Well, I think what it was, I think the key for me, from what I can see and where I've been able to kind of piece together, when the Sith disappeared and went into hiding, that was kind of, because when you had the Sith as the Sith Empire, and you had all the thousands of Sith, the Jedi had something that they could focus on. They had a war. They had they had an enemy that they knew, okay, this is our enemy. This is what we focus on. We need to focus on not only defeating them, but being better than them morally and being the opposite of what they want. So once the Sith went into hiding, once they, Bane instituted the rule of two and they went into hiding, they didn't have that. So they were able to, much like again, in history, being a history buff, in Japan, when the Tokugawa period started, the samurai no longer had some people to fight against, so they went into becoming lords and governors and things like that, and a lot of them started to become much like the Jedi, very arrogant, very thinking they were better, thinking that they were somehow superior, and you saw this kind of decay start within them. And you see that with the Jedi too, I think, during this time period. You see this slow decay where they start to, fall away from what they were. Yeah, they lose focus. And I think there's also the issue of, at least by the time we see them in the prequels, of who do the Jedi answer to? Do they answer to the Senate? Do they answer to the Chancellor? Or are they ultimately only answerable to themselves?
I think that's probably more accurate.
Yeah.
They probably just did what was best for themselves, but nobody really minded too much because they weren't out to be this fighting force anymore. They were able to turn inward and continue their studies in the Force.
Yeah. No one really worried about it because, like you said, until you had the Clone Wars, and then suddenly the Jedi are the generals again and no longer peacekeepers. Mm-hmm. And which is what they were, like, Obi-Wan said, they were guardians of peace and justice. They were basically superhuman cops.
Right.
They were out, they would go to a planet if there was an issue and they would try to resolve it. But suddenly you're put in positions where not only do they have to fight, but they have to lead men, they have to invade worlds, and it didn't take long for Palpatine to kind of work a way to start to try to paint them into a negative light, manipulate things behind the scenes so that the population didn't necessarily see the Jedi as the good guys or, with the best intention of the people, that they were only out for themselves. And
that wasn't so hard because they do show that in the prequels, with the general population getting the attitude of, Jedi. They think they're better than everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you see that with the Clone Wars TV series too. That the Jedi weren't necessarily the most popular group of people, and that's what made it so much easier when Order 66, or I found out it was officially known in the Star Wars universe, Operation Nightfall, which I think has a cool name. A very, very, very military name, I think, Operation Nightfall.
Yeah.
That he was able to, have the population think, well, yeah, that makes sense. Sure. Yeah. The Jedi are all gone. Good. But so we've kind of talked about the Jedi of the prequels, and so now we kind of go into the Jedi after the fall and the Jedi in hiding and how that affected those that survived. I mean, from the stories that we get, how that affected the Jedi that survived, and how we can perceive how it might have affected them. Those that were able to survive the purge and go into hiding, and and what we would have done. I mean, you see your entire life that you've known, literally all your life, destroyed. Do you maintain what you were taught? Do you keep or do you just say, you know what, I'm done. I'm going on my own way. I'm doing something else. The Jedi are dead, so I'm going my own way.
If you use Obi-Wan and Yoda as examples, I mean, they pretty well maintained their integrity.
Yeah. But then you have, and I know you guys said you haven't watched Rebels, but you have people like Kanan Jarrus, who was also known as Caleb Doom, who didn't. He didn't turn to the dark side, but he basically went off and, said, I'm going somewhere else. And he eventually did return to being a Jedi. But initially he was like, I'm done. I'm finding love. I'm finding, I'm going to be a smuggler. I'm going to be, all this other stuff. But I think it's one of those things that once you're in that world and you've been influenced by it from the time you were basically a toddler, that it becomes so much part of you that it would be very hard to leave that and to go somewhere else and do something else. That need of, and whether or not the Jedi thought they were better than others, or the arrogance, they still had this mantra that was, I think, and you can see that with a lot of the Jedi, especially if you watch Clone Wars and Rebels, is this thing of helping others that they viewed as unable to help themselves. That was even to the very end, that was one of the things that the Jedi always tried to do, was to help those that they felt couldn't help themselves, to help others. Yeah. And you see this even after the fall of the Jedi, like I said, with Rebels and the books and the comics, that those that survived were constantly trying to do. It was almost like they couldn't help themselves. They see someone in need, they have to help. They have to try and do something to make that person's life better in some way. So we can sit here and criticize the Jedi for being arrogant and the hubris, but they always tried to do the best that they could and to help, like I said, help others. So,
if it helped the Jedi cause.
Yes. Yeah. At least in the beginning. I think once the Jedi fell, those that survived, that remained true, kind of saw, especially people like Obi-Wan and Yoda, kind of saw what caused the fall. And I think they kind of were had to take a step back and rethink, what the Jedi were, and of course that that was up for Luke initially, and unfortunately because they're probably waiting for Rise of Skywalker to end, we really don't know a lot about what happened after Return of the Jedi with the Jedi Order and Luke's new temple.
Right.
Again, we have legends, but we don't know how much of legend they're going to keep and how much they're going to throw away.
Right. Does it fall back on, the Yavin 4 and where the Academy was set up in the books and.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we know that Disney isn't afraid to use bring in legends. That they've done that before, especially with Thrawn and others like that. They've used legends before, but again, they seem to use it a very piecemeal way. They'll pick characters here and there, name drop, things like that. But
which is why I'm hoping we see a new direction and maybe we can firm up some of this stuff with the universe.
Yeah.
Continuity.
Yeah, I think they're waiting for this trilogy to end because they don't want to bring. There might be something in this movie that if you have a book that takes place in between there, could spoil what's going to happen at the end. So I think they're waiting for this last movie to come out and end, so then they can fill in all the spots of what happened between Jedi and the end of the original trilogy and the beginning of the new trilogy, the sequel trilogy. So
I hope so. But,
yeah.
With everything that has been going on with the movies, right now all I can do is kind of sit back and hope that the third one isn't a poop storm.
Yeah.
Keep the fingers crossed and hope for the best.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like we said before, JJ has said that this movie will tie in every one of the other movies. It will tie in all the other trilogies together. So
yeah,
that's a tall task for the movie, but we will see.
Yeah, but to bring Palpatine back, it's kind of, man, you had to go there.
Yeah. That's going to be interesting to see how they do that.
I mean, we're going to get him and Maul back, and that's how this is going to play out?
Oh. Have they said Maul's coming back?
No, I'm throwing it. If we're bringing Palpatine back, who got blown up into an electrical cloud, I mean...
Well, we've already had Maul back and then killed again.
Right. But apparently Darksiders never die.
I don't know.
That's why the Jedi had such a hard time. They're like cockroaches.
Well, we were talking when we were doing our talk about the Sith, where it seems like the Sith couldn't anchor themselves as the Force Ghost. They had to anchor themselves to something. I'm thinking the Empire had clones. So how hard would it be to have a clone of the Emperor way out there with the reserve fleet that's just waiting to be awakened?
Yeah.
Kind of like, Battlestar. Hey, I just awakened a new body.
Well, they did that in the Legends. They had a whole comic series. I think it was Dark Empire.
Yes.
Where you had the clone emperors, and the emperor, Palpatine had a whole army of clones waiting, so that if that body died or wore out, he would have, because in that one, at least in that continuity, the dark side physically affected the body and caused it to decay at a more rapid rate because you had all that dark side energy going in you. So the Emperor always had newer, younger clones that could move on. And another thing we saw in Rebels, and I know we've been talking about the Jedi, but this is kind of is we seen that the Emperor was able to change his appearance, because the appearance that the image that he showed the populace, that when you would see like images of the Emperor speaking or propaganda images of the Emperor, it was not the shriveled old Darth Sidious. It was the Chancellor. It was the young. That was the image that was portrayed to the general populace. So they had no idea what the Emperor actually looked like. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's all kinds of tricks that the dark side, and like you said, like we said earlier, the Sith were able to attach themselves to objects that held, dark side energy. You see on that, that it appears that they're going to the original Death Star. So it would make sense that he would put his energy. There's probably a lot of dark side energy in there. So that could be definitely a place where he could attach his energy to, is the Death Star. We've seen Sith do that before with Exar Kun attaching himself to the Sith Temple on Yavin 4. So that, to me, that makes the most sense of what he did. It was he was able to attach his life force and his energy to the Death Star.
That could be a trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what you call a detour off of the main subject.
Well, segueing back, if you would like.
Okay.
That's another kind of opposites between the Sith and the Jedi, is that where the Sith had the absolute ruler, the Jedi had the council.
Yes.
And you're talking, this was supposed to be a council of 12 Jedi Masters who made, all the important decisions and everything. But did you ever notice that really when it boiled down to it, it was always Yoda and Mace?
Yeah. Well, from what I understand is they had the council, but then they had a rotating person who would be kind of like the head of the council. That would be the spokesman. That would be kind of the one that would kind of always not necessarily be in charge, but would be at the head of the seat. And during this time, it was usually one or two people. And at this time, it happened to be Mace and Yoda. And if I remember correctly, because of the Clone Wars, they decided just to keep it like that, just so they didn't upset the balance.
I see.
And have to deal with. So at least that's kind of what I remember hearing. But then of course
I always thought it was funny that the two of them always seemed to be making all the decisions, even when everybody else put their input in, and they always agreed. Like, even if Mace disagreed, Yoda would quickly be like, yeah, you got a point there, maybe.
Yeah. Being put on the council and not being granted the rank of master, which is just unfair.
How could you do that? I mean,
well, I know.
Maybe if he got a haircut, people take him seriously.
Wow.
He's running around like an emo kid.
And of course, we have probably the most controversial aspect of the Jedi Order, which is kidnapping.
And we gloss over that.
Yeah, whatever. I mean,
it's an honor. Thank you. We're leaving with your child now.
It's okay. They'll have a better life, probably. Well, maybe not. They're probably going to die at the hands of a Sith, but
Well, I mean, you do get the feeling that this was that the parents were giving them over somewhat willingly.
Well, they get that government check.
Yeah.
We assume. I mean, it makes you wonder how many times did they walk up and just mind trick them and be like, no, this is what's best for your child. Yes, this is what's best.
You haven't had any children yet.
You have no children. I have no children. Yes. I mean, but as a parent, I couldn't imagine someone, I have a 5-year-old daughter now. And I couldn't imagine someone coming up and saying, yes, your daughter has a special ability. We're going to take her and raise her as our own, and you probably will never see her again. All right, bye. Thank you.
Well, that's how I'm going to, get my special soldiers. When I take over, guys, I'm sorry to tell you.
Oh.
That's all right. My kids are too short.
Mine's so independent thinking. She would try to overthrow you probably.
Well, then that's who's in charge of the secret police.
Mine are too short to be stormtroopers.
I call mine my little Sith Lord.
Oh, perfect.
Darth Vader's already her favorite character in Star Wars, so.
Oh, then you can tell her she needs to hear the interview.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I have to.
I hopefully will be seeing him this month, so I will see if I can't get a hold of an autograph photo.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
I'm waiting for Ray to jump in. Yeah, me too.
Well, I thought that was a given. Oh, my bad.
Oh.
Wow.
I'm sure Andrew will have no problem with that. And like for your benefit, Mark, he's even, he had no problem volunteering to come back on the show.
Yep.
Oh, cool. Awesome. That'd be awesome. Yes, that's awesome.
Yeah, he fit right in. He was fun.
Well, he said that he would come back, but wasn't there something about he wanted to take us out to see the Skywalker Ranch? Wasn't that something we talked about?
Oh, yeah, he mentioned something about that. Yeah.
Yes, please.
For a screening, or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, please. Yes.
I hope he listens to this episode.
Well, I got it. I don't know if you noticed, but he started following War of the Stars yesterday.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Shameless promotion.
Shameless promotion. Well, I sent him an invite.
Well, there you go.
And then I posted the little join me and together we can rule the galaxy, something special. So I may have been shamelessly saying, we could sure use your support, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you out in internet land couldn't see it, but I just did the Kermit the Frog flailing arm. Yay!
Yeah, actually, when I see him, I think I'm going to try to get him to do what we're talking is the little shout out for us.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That'd be really cool. Yeah. So,
definitely.
So Jedi Order, I mean, good guys or just misunderstood?
Wow.
That's my only two choices.
I
think they got too used to the power.
I think so too. I mean, what's the old saying? Is power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that beautiful temple, the comforts.
They saw themselves as being so much different than the Sith, and the only difference is that they didn't necessarily use overt dark side powers.
Right.
But in many ways, and I think that was one of the issues that the Sith had, was they saw the Jedi as hypocrites.
Mm-hmm. You're no different than us.
Especially during this time period where, the beginning of the fall, they see them as, yeah, you're no different than us. Mm-hmm. You just disguise your hubris and your arrogance and
your lust for power and
yeah. Well, at least we're out in the open saying like, yeah, we're all these things.
Right. Because I mean, yeah, the Jedi may mask it as, oh, we're just training, we're trying to be better with the Force and all this, but it's just a way
here
of
to guide
gaining
you.
Power.
We're going to guide you to, our viewpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, they still had that thirst for power. They always wanted to be better. They were always training to become better than they were and better than the other Jedi next to them. And they still observed the obedience and subservitude. The Jedi, they had the master and the apprentice, and
well, and my whole problem with the Jedi is they in all the movies, we're so good, but every time they use that mind trick,
I know,
they are taking away somebody's free will.
Yeah.
And to me, that's evil.
Yeah.
And not necessarily evil per se, but like Qui-Gon was considered one of the more old school Jedi that believed in the old ways, and even he had no qualms using the Force to cheat to get what he wanted.
Yeah. Definitely.
Roll the dice. Woo, look at that. I like that wave of your hand. You think you're some kind of Jedi?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't... They definitely weren't 100% pure of heart, I wouldn't say.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we will start wrapping things up now and just go with... I think that was... I think we pretty much kind of gave our final thoughts there. So, so anyway, you can catch us every week here at War of the Stars. If you want to get in contact with us, you can do that by email at realmofthemistentertainment@gmail.com or on Twitter at Realm of the Mist Entertainment. Also our Facebook page, Realm of the Mist Entertainment, and fans of Realm of the Mist Entertainment and War of the Stars all on Facebook. You can contact me by email at johntolley3930 and on Twitter at John Tolley1 because I'm John Mark Tolley 1 because I'm of course the number one John Mark Tolley on Twitter. Instagram at John Tolley3930 and Facebook at Mark Tolley. Also, remember to like and subscribe on YouTube if you're checking this off YouTube. You can also check us out on Anchor.fm, which is your one-stop shop for all your podcast needs. Give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, like us on Stitcher and Spotify. And also, Patreon. Support us on Patreon. We can definitely use the monetary support, and that gives you access to a lot of other content, including our uncensored, some of our uncensored shows, and some of our just exclusive content on there. And Joe, where can they find you at?
You can find me over on Steamhouse Entertainment on Facebook, or Joe Cahill, director producer. Steamhouse on Entertainment on both Instagram and on Twitter. You can find us as Coffee Steampunk. And then just about every place that Ray's about to say as well, you can find me.
All right, Ray, where can they find you at?
I can be found on Chronicles of the Lost Realm. That is on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I do interviews for Breaking the Fourth Wall, which is part of Realm of the Mist Entertainment, and you can also hear me playing a rather downtrodden character on Shattered Dawn, which is Shattered Tabletop Games on Facebook.
All right. Well then, and until next time, remember. Sorry. Oh wow. Anyway, remember, this is not just my Star Wars. This isn't just your Star Wars. This is our Star Wars. Until next time, may the Force be with you.